Everyone says this truck is going to save America's pickup market. It's the most efficient truck ever made. It's the working man's hero. It's the game changer that'll make everyone forget about expensive half-tons. I've been hearing this story for months, so I spent a week driving this Maverick Hybrid like it wasn't a precious efficiency experiment. And I've found something that nobody's talking about. Things that might actually matter more than EPA numbers plastered all over the window sticker. Because if this is the future of trucks, we need to know what that future actually feels like. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse Racer, lover of driving fast, fun things. And on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, everybody's reviewing this 2025 Maverick Hybrid for fuel consumption numbers, but nobody's asking the important question: does this drive like something you'd actually want to own? I've spent a week behind the wheel to see if Ford's engineers have delivered something that actually serves drivers or serves spreadsheets. And before we get into what this is like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. For 2025, Ford's put in the hard work and given the Maverick a bunch of upgrades. It is the first iteration of the hybrid all-wheel drive, which was the most requested feature from customers. They've updated the styling, there's a one-pedal drive mode, and a 360-degree camera. And like before, yes, this truck uses unibody construction because Ford said, what if we make a pickup that doesn't sound like a maraca full of nuts and bolts? The hybrid power unit consists of a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder along with an electric motor. Combined, it makes 191 horsepower and 173 pounds of instant torque. There is a 1.1 kilowatt-hour battery on board that is liquid-cooled. The transmission is an electronically controlled CVT, and before you start typing "that's not a real CVT" in the comments, understand this: continuously variable means the ratio changes smoothly without steps, which this system does perfectly through electronic control of motor speeds. It can spin at any speed or even backwards, creating an infinite range of effective gear ratios. It's the difference between mechanical compromise and electronic precision, which is why it doesn't feel like driving through pudding. More on that later. Yes, this is all-wheel drive. Steering is electrically assisted. Front suspension is based on McPherson struts, a multi-link trailing arm setup at the rear with twin-tube dampers and updated valving for 2025. Four-wheel disc brakes, of course, with ABS and regenerative braking. Wheels and tires on this Lariat are 19s. Payload capacity is 1,400 pounds. Towing capacity with the 4K tow package is 4,000 pounds. And curb weight of this Maverick Hybrid is 3,856 pounds. Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this, and if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. Behind the wheel, this is still the Maverick's upright compact truck seating position. The seat is on the more compact side. It's definitely not as big as what you find in the Ranger, but it's still supportive and comfortable, just not that well bolstered when it comes to lateral support. Because this is a Maverick, it's not a full-size pickup. The hip point is just about perfect. It's crossover-like. Obviously, this is related to the Bronco Sport and the Escape, but that hip point is perfect. But that's one of the reasons why people choose crossovers in the first place, so that's not going to be an obstacle when it comes to choosing this Maverick, because you don't have to climb up into this thing. What I do appreciate about the driver interface is that there's a lot of adjustment in this seat. There's a lot of travel to it, basic adjustments. It's powered here in this Lariat, but there's also a lot of adjustment in the steering column, so people of just about any height can find a comfortable seating position. Now, you will compromise rear seat space, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and there's a modest amount of headroom even with this sunroof here. The steering wheel is a great shape, encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3. It's perfectly sized here, absolutely suits the character of the Maverick. There are some secondary controls like the adaptive cruise control, audio controls, drive mode buttons here, and it's an odd place to put drive mode buttons, but I suppose it makes sense, keeps everything clean, because they'd have to add another button or switch somewhere around the cabin, and it makes sense to put it here, keep it out of the way. The instrument cluster, the main part is digital, and there's some LED readouts on the outboard side of the instrument cluster for fuel level as well as water temperature. Because this is the Maverick, there is that EV coach part of the display. And if you're trying to hypermile or are new to hybrids, well, it's one of those things that you can use to help improve your hybrid driving techniques or even efficiency. I really don't use it. And what I find is the way that this drives normally, naturally, at least for my driving style, I'm capturing as much energy as possible when just relying on the regenerative braking. Speaking of drive modes, when you switch it over to eco mode, like I have here, and press the L button, we are in Ford's one pedal drive situation for this Maverick Hybrid. Now, if you've driven a lot of EVs and driven something like the Mustang Mach-E, which I find to have the best one pedal drive setup in the business, what I find is that this one pedal drive mode in the Maverick Hybrid isn't quite as aggressive. I'm off the pedal and it is just slowing down, and in normal driving I definitely have to use the brake pedal. But if you're going to use eco mode, well, give this a try. Let me know what you think in the comments if you are a Maverick Hybrid owner. And back to sport mode, and I like sport mode because it's just a little bit more responsive. Really doesn't change much except for throttle mapping and the way the transmission is delivering its continuously variable ratios. Obviously, the big news for 2025 is this large infotainment display. It's based on Ford's latest tech. One of the things I do appreciate is that connectivity is a breeze. It is so easy to connect your phone to this system. It puts every other OEM system to shame. I use it on wireless CarPlay and it works perfectly for me. Visibility is just excellent because you've got tall glass all around. There is that 360-degree camera, and because it's displayed on the big screen and the quality of the image is fantastic, it's very easy to park this thing even though it is a compact pickup. Now, in terms of spaciousness, I'm quite comfortable here. Yeah, it is a compact pickup, but your passenger has a lot of room. There's lots of room for storage, various cup holders and bottle holders all throughout the cabin. There is, of course, the ability to 3D print some bits like a cup holder for that second row, and Ford's placed one in this truck. I didn't have to 3D print one myself, and it works just great. It's very interesting, and if you're going to use this on a daily basis for various things, you have the option to 3D print all kinds of things that fit your Ford Maverick. If you're going to use your Ford Maverick for all kinds of activities on a day-to-day basis, well, Ford's put the design files online so that you can 3D print your own stuff, and it fits in the OEM locations in this Maverick. This is a compact pickup. After all, the second row is on the compact side. Sure, a couple of adults would be happy in that second row for a little while, maybe not on long distances, but at least it is comfortable. What I do appreciate about the second row is that there's some storage underneath the seat, and I've been able to live with this daily and use that storage for all kinds of stuff to keep it out of the way and in a safe spot. For example, it's midsummer right now, so I have a bunch of extra water bottles underneath that rear seat just in case I get a little thirsty on one of these hot days, and that keeps the bottles from rolling around the cabin or whatever the case is. In this particular model, there is a power outlet in the bed, which is fantastic, and of course it's various tie downs, and this of course comes with bed liner from the factory, so that makes living with this easy to deal with straight from the showroom floor. I don't often talk about aesthetics when it comes to interiors, but yeah, the interior trim color is called Smoke Truffle, which might be a little fancy for Ford Maverick buyers. It sounds like something you'd get at a Michelin-starred restaurant somewhere. But the one thing I don't really care for is this dashboard. It's hard blue plastic in this trim, and there's a lot of glare from this, I find. But the rest of the aesthetic, the materials, they all seem very durable. Love the way it looks. I just get a different interior color, but it's clear that Ford's design team actually drives trucks because everything works like it should here in this Maverick. From my perspective, The question is, how does this drivetrain actually perform? We've got the naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, we've got an electric motor, and this one is all-wheel drive. Well, it turns out surprisingly well. It'll do 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds. Top speed's limited to something north of maybe 110 miles an hour, which is more than fast enough for a Maverick, at least in this part of the world. But I'm really pleased with the way this hybrid power unit works, because there really isn't much of a downside. And that's because the electric motor delivers instant torque that fills every gap where traditional CVTs make you question your life choices. In traffic, it responds immediately. Merging onto highway speeds happens without drama because there's plenty of power and torque. It's like having a personal assistant who anticipates your needs but doesn't actually judge your caffeine intake. And in the real world, the power delivery is so smooth, you forget you're driving something that's more complicated than the space shuttle, and that's probably a good thing. And the thing is, the CVT in this Maverick Hybrid is actually good, which feels kind of weird to say, but it's true. If you're about to type furiously in the comments that I don't know how the CVT works, well, this channel isn't for you, and be sure to call up to your mom and let her know that you need a sandwich because you're getting hangry. In the interests of science, we need to launch this Maverick Hybrid, don't you think? Let's. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Consistent power delivery from launch to whatever speed you want to accelerate to, and that is impressive. That's one of the upsides to having this very sophisticated drivetrain, and it works exceptionally well here. Yeah, it's efficient, but when you need power delivery, it's got your back. Traditional CVTs often feel like driving through a big bowl full of chocolate pudding while someone plays dying whale sounds. But Ford's system uses the electric motor to eliminate that whole rubber bandy sensation that everyone hates. Instead of rev hang and artificial drama, you get linear acceleration that makes sense. It's like they took everything annoying about CVTs and solved it with an electric motor and a little bit of engineering. And sometimes technology actually improves things instead of just making them more complicated. I think the best thing about this drivetrain is that the 173 pounds of torque is delivered instantly, which is much like my reaction to criticism about my seating position. This is all-wheel drive, and I really wanted to try this in some low grip conditions, and even on some gravel, I really couldn't unsettle the all-wheel drive system. That torque gets distributed to the rear axle instantaneously, and this feels sure-footed. Now, I'd love to try this in the snow, and maybe we'll do that in the winter, but based on some limited low grip driving, well, I'm impressed with this all-wheel drive system, even in the rain, extremely sure-footed when I'm asking for maximum acceleration. One of the interesting things about this transmission is that despite it being incredibly sophisticated, it actually has a small number of moving parts, much smaller than the YouTube comment arguments about this transmission, and it makes a lot more sense than those arguments as well. And the best part, unlike some CVTs, it doesn't sound like it's plotting your mechanical doom. Dynamically, this is a lot more satisfying to drive than I thought it would be, and that obviously comes from the fact that they paid careful attention to the tuning of the entire dynamics package here. That's steering, braking, suspension, and then how well the drivetrain's integrated. A couple of things I really like. One is the steering. Like it because it is strong on center, and in fact it's so strong when I have it on adaptive cruise, and that system works so well. This thing tracks perfectly straight on the highway, so I can keep a light touch on the steering wheel, and my touch on the steering wheel is so light that the torque sensor on the steering column doesn't recognize that my hands are actually in contact with the steering wheel, so the adaptive cruise system says, hey, hold on to the steering wheel, which I actually am, but being a racer, I like having a light touch on the steering wheel. Anyway, love the steering for it being strong on center, love how it translates my inputs into steering angle, and this thing is actually relatively easy to park despite it being a pickup with a kind of long bed. It's actually very easy to park this thing, very maneuverable, but just don't expect a lot of feel or feedback to come through the steering wheel. On the other hand, brakes are a 10 out of 10 for me because I've got great feel and control with this brake pedal, and they've done an excellent job blending regenerative braking with actual braking when the pads clamp onto the rotors through the brake pedal. And that is a difficult thing to do. And they've done a great job here because that brake pedal feels natural and the regenerative braking works exactly like it expected to in a sophisticated hybrid like this. On a smooth road like this, ride quality is impeccable. We just drove the Tremor, and that's got a little bit more compliance in the suspension and the tire. And what I found is that this Maverick Hybrid rides a little bit firmer than the Tremor, which is kind of what you'd expect. And especially since I live in Toronto, and a lot of those roads are completely horrific, very much unlike world-class roads you'd find in a world-class city like Toronto seems to think of itself. Those roads are terrible, and you find that this does ride a little bit more firmly than you'd like. But if you don't live in a city with streets filled with potholes, well, it's not a problem. Seriously, though, the suspension tuning of this Maverick Hybrid reveals a lot about Ford's priorities when it comes to their compact pickup truck. Instead of trying to make this truck feel like a sports car or pretend to be a rock crawler, in this hybrid, they tuned it for the reality of how people actually drive. The suspension has no problem absorbing road imperfections without turning into a carnival ride. Steering provides enough feedback to feel connected without beating you up, and the whole thing feels composed in ways that matter in daily driving. They've engineered this suspension package for the 99% of driving that happens on actual roads instead of the 1% that happens in automotive journalists' fantasies. It's like they remembered good dynamics benefit everyone, not just people who track their cars on weekends. And the thing is, there's no weird pedal feel, no expected grab, no artificial softness, no computer-controlled drama. It just stops when you want to stop, which sounds basic, but is actually very sophisticated engineering. There's a lot of braking systems out there that feel like they were engineered by committee, but this one actually feels like it was designed by people who drive in traffic. And the way regenerative braking works in actual braking, it blends so seamlessly, like a good DJ blending two tracks that you never thought would go together. And the truth behind the hype of this Maverick Hybrid is this: it hauls what you need to haul, it tows what you need to tow. Ford built the truck for truck buyers who need utility more than ego. And it does it all while sipping fuel like a responsible adult. The driving experience is more engaging than I ever expected. The interior is much more thoughtful than it needs to be, and the price is more reasonable than the market typically allows. It's engineered for reality instead of fantasy, which might be the most radical approach in today's automotive landscape. And in a lot of ways, this is the truck that America needs, just not the truck that America thinks it wants, and there is a big difference there. And I think the best thing is that Ford built this hybrid truck that doesn't apologize for being a hybrid or being a truck. How do you spec yours? Well, I do have some thoughts. What you are looking at is a 2025 Ford Maverick Hybrid all-wheel drive in Lariat trim in shadow black paint and a smoked truffle interior. This one has a couple of options, and the big ones are the moonroof and the 4K tow package. Base price in the US is $36,735, and as tested, this is $38,800. Here in Canada, base price is $46,500, and as tested, it's $49,450, and these prices are before freight, taxes, fees, etc. Now, at this price, you're getting a lot of truck for that money. It's thousands less than a comparable midsize truck with similar capability, thousands less than most SUVs with all-wheel drive, and about what a decent used truck costs in today's insane market. This pricing makes sense when you consider what you're actually getting: modern hybrid tech, proper all-wheel drive, truck utility, and Ford's latest tech. It's positioned perfectly between too cheap to be good and too expensive to justify, which is exactly where most rational purchase decisions live. And before y'all get excited about ordering your Ford Maverick today, let's get into some owner intel. These are the things that you'll learn after living with a truck like this for months instead of just a few days like we have here. First, the regen braking. Ford's EV Coach gives you real-time feedback on brake efficiency, but here's what no review tells you. In eco mode, the transition from regen to actual braking can feel grabby at low speeds. drive-throughs become a lesson in pedal finesse. Owners say the trick is feathering the brake pedal to stay in the regen zone. You can actually see it happening on the display. But if you need traditional brakes, owners discovered that slippery mode temporarily disables regen. Efficiency takes a hit, but your passengers stop questioning your driving skills. And here's something that might bug you. Ford removed the real-time PowerSplit display that earlier Mavericks had. You know, the graphic showing whether you're running on battery, engine, or both. Gone. For a truck this sophisticated, that's like removing the tachometer. Some owners are actually using OBD2 apps to get that data back. And speaking of things that'll annoy you, put anything on the rear center seat, even a grocery bag, and the seatbelt chime goes ballistic. Most owners just buckle the empty seatbelt. But here's what owners love. The 360-degree camera system is legit. Tesla quality clarity, which is saying something, and the hybrid system itself, once you learn its personality, it's more responsive than the internet gives it credit for. And thanks to owners for sharing their experiences, because oftentimes the best intel comes from people who have actually paid for these things with their hard-earned money. My verdict? Well, let's start with my fuel consumption because this is the hybrid after all. I'm getting 29.7 miles per gallon or 7.9 liters per 100 kilometers for my Canadian friends. And for me, that's remarkable because I'm not afraid to use the throttle and have been enjoying this Maverick. And here's the thing about this truck. It's not revolutionary because of its fuel consumption. That's just the headline. It's an interesting truck because Ford actually solved problems that other manufacturers are still ignoring. That CVT that everyone's afraid of, it disappears behind electric torque that fills every gap where traditional CVTs just kind of fall apart. The hybrid system doesn't just save gas, it makes the truck more responsive in traffic than most V6s, and the chassis tuning is legitimately considered, not just efficient and boring. Is it perfect? No. Will it save the truck market? Well, that depends on whether people care more about capability or just the idea of capability. After a week of not babying this Maverick Hybrid, I can tell you this is the first compact truck in years that feels like it was designed by people who actually drive trucks. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 Ford Maverick Hybrid all-wheel drive. Hope you liked this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this, and as always, sharing is caring. So please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please head up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including a very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Ford Mavericks. And since you hung around this long, well, have a look at a completely different take of this Ford Maverick, and it's the off-road version. It's the Tremor, and I think you might like that episode. Complete contrast to what this Maverick Hybrid is all about, and I think you'll enjoy that episode. Thanks again for watching. See you again next time.